History and evolution of UK immigration law. Introduction. The history of immigration law in the United Kingdom reflects changing political, economic, and social realities. Immigration regulation has evolved from a largely open system of movement within the British Empire to a highly structured system of border control, visas, and immigration enforcement. Why it is important. The historical development of immigration law is important because it explains one, why immigration control exists today, two, how modern legislation develops, and three, the relationship between nationality, citizenship, and migration. The legal principles underlying immigration policy in the United Kingdom. Modern UK immigration law is the product of more than a century of legislative reform that is shaped by war, decolonization, economic migration, and human rights law. Early immigration control before the 20th century. For much of its history, the United Kingdom had very limited immigration restrictions. Movement into Britain was generally unrestricted because, one, the UK was part of a large empire and trading network. Two, migration within the British Empire was largely permitted. Three, economic expansion required labor mobility. And four, foreign nationals could usually enter the country without visas or formal immigration permission. Immigration was therefore regulated more by social and economic factors than legal restrictions. The first modern immigration control, early 20th century. The first major immigration control laws were introduced in response to concerns about migration from continental Europe. The key legislation was the Aliens Act of 1905. This act expressly marked the beginning of modern migration control in Great Britain, as it introduced immigration officers at ports, power to refuse the entry to certain migrants, restrictions on individuals considered undesirable. The act allowed authorities to deny entry to people who were unable to support themselves, two, considered criminals, and three, viewed as threats to public order. The legislation primarily targeted migrants arriving from Eastern Europe. Immigration control between the world wars. Further immigration regulation developed after World War I. The Aliens Restriction Act of 1914 introduced stronger government powers over foreign nationals. It allowed authorities to restrict entry and movement of foreigners. It allows individuals to deport individuals considered threats to national security, controls the employment of non-citizens. Later, the Aliens Order 1920 expanded immigration control and established administrative systems that continued for decades. These early laws focused mainly on foreign nationals rather than citizens of the British Empire. Immigration during the British Empire. During the height of the British Empire, individuals from Commonwealth territories often had the right to enter and live in Britain. This principle was reinforced by the British Nationality Act of 1948. This act created the status of citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies. It allowed citizens of many Commonwealth countries to migrate to Britain. And this period saw significant migration, particularly from the Caribbean, South Asia, and Africa. One well-known historical moment was the arrival of the Windrush generation, beginning with migrants arriving on the HMT Empire Windrush in 1948. These migrants helped rebuild the British economy after World War II. The introduction of Commonwealth immigration controls. Increasing migration led to political pressure to regulate entry. The UK began restricting immigration from Commonwealth countries through new legislation. Key statutes include Commonwealth Migrants Act of 1962 and Commonwealth Immigrants Act of 1968. These acts introduced employment voucher systems, restrictions on migration from former colonies, and greater migration control mechanisms. And for the very first time, Commonwealth citizens were required official permission to enter the UK. This marked a significant shift in British immigration policy. The Immigration Act of 1971, foundation of modern immigration law in the United Kingdom. The most important piece of immigration legislation remains the Immigration Act of 1971. This act established the modern immigration control framework. Its key features include 1. Leave to enter, leave to remain. This means individuals must obtain permission to enter or remain in the UK. 2. Immigration officers. This makes officials at ports gain authority to examine travelers. 3. Deportation powers. The government obtained stronger powers to remove individuals from the country. 4. The concept of partiality. This gives certain individuals with strong ties to the United Kingdom the right of abode. The Act remains the legal foundation of immigration law today. Citizenship reform. Immigration law is closely connected to nationality law. A major reform occurred through the British Nationality Act of 1981. This act restructured British citizenship. It created three main categories. A. British citizenship. B. British overseas territories citizenship. C. British overseas citizenship. The Act also changed the rules for acquiring citizenship through birth and descent. This legislation significantly shaped the relationship between immigration status and nationality. Asylum and immigration reforms of 1990s to 2000. Increasing global migration and refugee movements led to further legislative reforms. Among these are the Immigration and Asylum Act of 1999, Nationality and Immigration and Asylum Act of 2002, the UK Borders Act of 2007. These laws introduced new asylum procedures, immigration detention powers, border enforcement reforms, and new appeal systems. The UK Border Agency was also created to administer immigration enforcement. The modern immigration system. More recent reforms have reshaped immigration law further. Key legislations include the Immigration Act of 2014 and the Immigration Act of 2016. These acts introduce policies sometimes described as the hostile environment. Key measures include restrictions on renting property to undocumented migrants, employment checks by employers, access restrictions to banking services and healthcare. These reforms aim to discourage unlawful migration in and within the United Kingdom. The role of human rights. Immigration law increasingly interacts with human rights law. Under the Human Rights Act of 1998, immigration decisions must comply with the European Convention on Human Rights. The most commonly invoked provision is Article 8, which protects family life as well as private life. Human rights arguments frequently arise in deportation and family immigration cases. Brexit and immigration reform. A major modern development was the UK's withdrawal from the European Union, known as Brexit. Before Brexit, citizens of EU member states could live and work in the United Kingdom under free movement rules. However, following Brexit, the UK introduced a point-based immigration system. This system treats EU and non-EU migrants under similar migration rules. Key themes in the evolution of UK immigration law. The historical development of immigration law reflects several themes, from open borders to regulation. Early migrations was largely unrestricted, but later became tightly controlled. Empire to national citizenship. The end of the British Empire changed the legal relationship between Britain and former colonies. Increasing administrative control. Immigration decisions are now heavily regulated through rules and procedures. Growing importance of human rights. Human rights law increasingly influences immigration decisions in the United Kingdom. In conclusion, the evolution of immigration law in the United Kingdom demonstrates how legal systems adapt to political, economic, and social change. From the Aliens Act of 1905 to the Immigration Act of 1971 and modern immigration reforms, the law has progressively developed into a comprehensive system governing migration. Understanding this historical context is essential for interpreting the modern structure of immigration law in the United Kingdom, including visa systems and enforcement mechanisms and human rights protections. The issue of immigration law in the United Kingdom continues to shape contemporary debates about border control, migration policy, and the rights of immigrants. Unless I can assist further, this is where I draw the curtain.